And Pakistan as our first sub-region in South Asia. So the village populations for these areas tend to be 75% of Afghani people living in villages and 65% of Pakistanis living in villages. And so this is an area that's certainly not urban like we would see in other areas of South Asia, like urban centers in India and other places like Dhaka as well in Bangladesh. And again, like we saw when we saw that climate map and the landforms map when we saw elevation, this is an arid and mountainous environment that presents difficulty to living. And we see that, we saw that in our movie, Charlie Wilson's War, as depicted through imagery. We saw that through pictures and other things. We see that in the book. It's certainly a difficult place to live because of the arid climate and the mountainous terrain. Majority Muslim population for these two countries, which makes sense as we see it's situated next to the Central Asian states like Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, the others, Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, I don't remember Tajikistan. Maybe I hit them all, maybe I said 1, 2 times, whatever. But you get the picture. Those Central Asian states, Muslim countries, these two places, because of Pakistan, which we talked about before, Pakistan and Bangladesh, Muslim countries, and that of Iran just being next door, and Southwest Asia, we also know there. So majority Muslim population. And earthquakes, so we would go back to the sort of the physical geography of things. Earthquakes are common in this region. So opium poppies grow in Afghanistan. This wasn't really a thing, or something that was too, I was a thing. That's a thing. We were talking, what in the world is he saying? This wasn't what it is now until the Soviets' occupation, when they saw that there was a market for this to be used for drugs, the opium poppies in Afghanistan. Here I include a picture from Kabul, Afghanistan, the capital city of Afghanistan, in the 1960s to sort of show you what life was like there. And it kind of exactly ties to when we looked at Iran and we looked at Tehran and we saw what it looked like before the revolution in 1979. Women were not wearing burqas. It was a very progressive society. People filling the university, strolling around. It really wouldn't have looked all that much different than Europe and the United States and other places at the time, in a lot of ways. Certainly from a sociocultural perspective, in how we would present ourselves. And then it's certainly in Afghanistan, when the Taliban had taken place and taken control, and the warlords, things have changed, and obviously now women are clothed very differently, and they're hidden, they're repressed, no longer seeking education and things like that. And so life has changed for women because of the Taliban in Afghanistan over the last 50 plus years. Islamabad, Pakistan, capital, and you can just sort of see, to put things into perspective, there are some high rises, some higher than others, but again, a major city in Pakistan, just to sort of illustrate Pakistani way of life. This brings me to the final sort of wrap up. I can't promise it, but our final wrap up of Charlie Wilson's War, which we watched for the United States, and our intervention in that Cold War proxy war back largely in the 1980s in Afghanistan. So if you remember, the Soviets go into a destabilizing Afghanistan because they're a buffer state between them and their USSR, the Soviet Union, and so because they're the Soviets and the United States was against them, the United States partners with the Pakistanis nearby and the Mujahideen, which are the fighters there. And we arm them and we finance them. And if you remember from the film, a friend of Joanna Herring they just referred to him as President Zia. That was sort of all you needed to know. And Mohammed Zia al-Haq, but President Zia. And he comes to the United States. If you remember, he's at some banquet and things like that. And if you remember, somebody questions him, you killed somebody. Actually, this is kind of interesting because it all ties a bit together here. Zia President Zia, was the head of state in Pakistan at the time. He was a general that led a coup. When the leader was, the last name of the leader was Bhutto, Bhutto. He's the leader of Pakistan at the time. General Zia takes over in a coup. He eventually has Bhutto executed, and then he rises to the level of president. He's in the movie. Later, Benazir Bhutto comes to power in Pakistan after Zia's death decades later. Or years later, I'm sorry, years later. Benazir Bhutto leading Pakistan most recently in the 1990s. She is the first woman head of state in a Muslim country. She leads them. Her father was the man that once led them until Zia had him executed. She rises to power, leading in the opposition. She becomes the head of state, prime minister of Pakistan. However, she is assassinated in 2007. Some somewhat recent memory, for at least for me, maybe not quite you. But again, this kind of ties back to some interesting things that are happening in Afghanistan and Pakistan. But again, how that proxy war between the Soviets and the United States in Afghanistan had shaped politics far beyond that of just Afghanistan, actually Pakistan as well, and the course of history. So if you remember, the West likes Pakistan and Zia and things because of the access there and the Mujahideen, but certainly things transpire. Himalayan country. So again, this is northern India, Nepal, and Bhutan. Most people live in the foothills of the mountains, cultivating terraced and stepped land, because you can imagine living in the Himalayan mountains too high would be quite challenging. This is noted to be the last place on Earth to acquire TV and the internet, that specifically being Bhutan, that country, which is this roundish one right there. I guess one last thing for this point, and again, the book you should be reading sort of the main points. I'm just highlighting them and reviewing them for you. Agriculture in the Arunachal Pradesh region of India is quite different in the sense that it can accommodate crops that are native to South America, like pineapples, peaches, guavas, citrus fruits. And so this is sort of an agriculturally distinct area of India. Then sort of, again, because this is in the same region with the Himalayan mountains, we're talking 29,035 feet. And then now we're talking about growing pineapples. So kind of just something to keep in mind. Might seem like it's a trick. It is not. Here's a picture of Nepal, Mount Everest, and Bhutan. Bhutan is known to be one of the happiest places on Earth for its people. Again, I mentioned before, Nepal has about 29 million people living there. Bhutan, here it's, again, this is that stepped or terraced agriculture that's taking place, and there's an industry there for organic farming taking place there. Some saying associated with its happiness. Northwest India. So we're talking Northwest India up here. So Western Northwest India, so now we're talking Northwest India, which is here already. Now the westernmost part of it, and just talking about economic inequality, because this area is quite disparate in terms of between the two of them, Punjab and Rajasthan. And these two areas being that Punjab is very wealthy, and in some years, in terms of its agriculture, can produce 2/3 of India's food reserves, whereas Rajasthan, less than 1% of the land is arable, and it is a very poor area for our understanding. Now moving to Delhi, the capital of India, and it's located in the center part of Northwest India. You know, we call this Northwest because this little area is also India. It's kind of confusing to don't lose track of that large part of the land. But Delhi, located in the center of this region with a population of nearly 20 million people. And it's known to be the most polluted city in the world. So thumbs down for the healthy aspect of air pollution and pollution in general. But we do know some more things about Delhi, more than just its pollution. So I'm not going to just label it only on the pollution as well. So here we have a popular tourist attraction in Humayun Tomb in Delhi, the Thar Desert in India as a very dry area. If we remember northwestern India, one of the drier areas of India, and Rajasthan, it does promote a moderate tourist industry for old fortresses and sites up in northwestern India. Northeastern South Asia, so we're getting a little bit more broad because we include Bangladesh now. Unlike northwest India, this subregion is wet and tropical. The Ganga-Brahmaputra Delta, which we know is right here in Bangladesh, is the most densely populated part of Bangladesh. The delta itself, geographically speaking, is the world's largest. And then again here, the textile industry in Bangladesh, which was once destroyed under the British, is now, Bangladesh now exports only second in the world, only behind China. And so that's now a major part of their economy. So Dhaka, Bangladesh, we talked about that before, very populated. Kolkata, India here, fascinating city in India with a large, rich history, formerly Calcutta, spelled with a C, and totally different spelling beyond just the C. And the tea industry here in Assam, again, produces half of India's tea here in this area. So again, just sort of overviewing these points from the book that are relatively important, but highly encourage you to still read the book if you can to get some more details on these points. But central India, the most of the country's remaining forest cover, which is important because if we know in areas where of India, in central India, where it is still wet, there are still tropical rainforest areas that are quite important for the biodiversity and ecology of the country. Mumbai, in this area, has the largest deep water port on India's west coast, and we know about Mumbai, again, home to Bollywood and Dalal Street, which is the India's version of their Wall Street. That brings us to some tiger sanctuaries here because of that remaining forest cover, and national parks and things like that. So tigers, the Bengal tiger, we have here off of India, the Bay of Bengal, the Bengal tiger. East Bengal is a region in India, and the Bengal tiger here, home in India. Tigers are among several species at risk due to forest loss in India. Mumbai, India here, and Dharavi in Mumbai, India, which we remember is a slum, the largest slum, if we recall that from our section on Mumbai specifically. Again, urge you to read Catherine Boo's book if you'd like some more information. Southern South Asia. Bangalore is known for its strong IT activity. It's there among the most important in India for its technology. We know, again, I'm not going to talk a little bit anymore about Kerala, except for the fact that, again, government interest in promoting women. It's in the past elected some local communist governments, and it's an outlier for sort of progress, more social safety nets and things like that. So it's an outlier in terms of some success there. We talk about Chennai, which is formerly known as Madras, India. It's now Chennai. It's an area known for pairing itself with European manufacturing of high-priced fashion, specifically Italian shoes and manufacturing. And we talked about Sri Lanka, Maldives here too, Maldives, island nation, but Sri Lanka, that sort of teardrop-shaped island, used to be known as Ceylon in the 70s, now Sri Lanka, and not totally too important to go into any more details. So we see here, maybe cherry picking my photos. We talk about it being an outlier, especially for women's rights, being among the best in all of India. And so I have a woman smiling, but again, tech industry, modernization and stuff that's taking place in Bangalore. Again, you can be seen here through these images. So, and lastly, some elephants bathing in Sri Lanka, so the Asian elephants they're baiting in Sri Lanka because elephants make everybody happy. And with that happiness, we conclude